What's up? Check it out. We are November 2020, number 15 day in, and Twitter, of course, in there for you, showing context on trends in Explore to make high quality information around the 2020 U.S. elections more accessible. We're adding context to trends and only displaying trends with added context in the For You tab. Learn more. Got it? I could click got it and it'd go away, right? So I scroll down here. We got the typical state election things and then some sports things. And then, whoa, what's this? Politics trending. Trump concedes. Almost 7,000 tweets. Where's the context around it? I thought we're supposed to have context around everything that's trending. But not that, huh? And did Trump really concede? Because the courts haven't even you know what I mean? It's like, what kind of ridiculous is that? This is gives me the vibe that they're trying to paint a narrative that people are going to flip if Trump ends up winning because this election is still undecided. It's a contested election. It's a normal process. And they're painting this whole thing of like the same people who said there's a clip that's going around about with Joe Biden and Trump at the debates where they're asking whether or not they'll concede. Not concede, but to wait to proclaim victory until the election is certified, basically. And Biden says, "Yeah, I'll wait." And this election is uncertified. Officially, it's uncertified. So this, there's serious legal contests going on in several states, several of the key states, obviously, and until that is decided, it could go either way. It's the coin's spinning in the air still. You can manipulate it to look one way or the other, but and of course throughout statistically speaking through the history of the United States, in this type of situation, it is more likely to go, I would think, based on the half-baked research I've done, it's more likely to go towards the candidate that it does seem like it's going for, right? But that doesn't mean it can't go for the other candidate. And a very interesting thing is that there's more than a few hundred instances of so-called voter fraud or whatever, anything, even if it's not fraudulent, even if there's just some weird anomaly or something, whatever it is, if there's more than a few hundred instances of that, then that's saying something. That's, if those numbers are in the thousands, like if there's 1,000 votes off in a state, or especially even in a county, then that's saying something. That's not that typical little handful of things that come up when these types of elections are scrutinized like this. So if we're talking a state and we're talking thousands of votes, and even like Trump said at that same spot in that particular debate, he said that if it's going to be tens of thousands of votes off, he said tens of thousands, which is actually very accurate. You know what I mean? And if you look at how close these states are, it's a very one or few tens of thousands of votes, so it's not for the most part. So that matters, and if it comes up to 10,000 votes, I mean, if they throw away 10,000 votes because of a mechanical error or whatever, or like machine errors, supposedly, things like that, that's a little bit different because we obviously, I mean, it could be argued, you can argue statistics however you want, right? That's why statistics is more of actually a rhetorical process. It's not a hard fact math process of like, oh, there were 12 votes here and da da da, like concretely. You get the data and then you have a discussion around it. And it may lead to an answer that's pretty straightforward and factual seeming and stuff, of course. But at least with that discussion, even if that turns out to be the case, you've discussed, like, why did those 12 votes happen like this or whatever, So that's the thing. And then otherwise, it's just constantly, there's always new ways of looking at the so-called facts in different light and things like that, no matter what it is. The most prominent things have been across the decades and centuries that are they're very, what would you say, like those prominent cases are still a mystery, so to speak. I don't think they should be a lot of times, but that's just the way it goes. So there's always something. There's always, the bigger it is, the more it can be twisted and the more it can be drug out. So anyway, I thought that's trippy that, you know, we're not going to get any trendings. Like, not even the sports has context around it. So they're still running this, telling us that, you know, which is a lie. And it's an uncertified election. They're letting Trump concede. Why aren't they, with all their so-called fact-checking and experts and dedication to a fair, balanced election? I mean, I'm asking rhetorically on that because we know why. It's obvious. We got to wake up. And I'm talking to the people on the left, you know, I'm just hanging on the pole in the middle. Like, I was over on the left too, but you got to wake up to this stuff. You know what I mean? You're being freaking brain fed and spoon washed. This is not, I mean, give me a break. When they all, can you not see all these social media people like banding together to create a freaking narrative, regardless of what you think about the MAGA side of things or whatever? Like, think about your own side. You know what I mean? You don't have to be a MAGA necessarily. But you got to consider both sides for one thing, and truly consider, not just, oh, this is what I remember, that, you know, this is the going narrative, da da da, and I got to talk like this in my head about it. But actually consider, like, that there might be decent people on the other side and what their values are and why they might be on that side, and factor that in, because none of us are normally, when we're at all as normal as a human can be, we're not going to be polarized hard to one side or the other. We shouldn't be. If we are at that point, then we're making an effort to be, you know, just to be deceptive or deceitful or whatever for no reason, just out of greed or power hungriness, or just to be ate up or whatever. I don't know. I don't want to, but otherwise, we all just want to get along, right? Not every single person wants to just get along, but for the most part, we all want to get along. We don't, that's the thing, and that's why they're trying to divide and conquer this country. So, if you don't think that the Nazis never left, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah, they were supposedly quote unquote defeated at whatever time period, but that was just like a fragment of it, you know, that wasn't, you can't wipe out that ideology that brought that little flash in the pan, so to speak, even though it was a big flash in the pan, right? But that is something that was going around already. You had Stalin, you had Mussolini, you had all the other powers that were behind those groups, and they didn't get totally wiped out. And as a matter of fact, a lot of them got absorbed into US corporations and NASA and stuff like that. So that's where that is. And a lot of people, we've been a melting pot over here and let a lot of people through. And at some point, the narrative against America started going south, and that's understandable, but to whatever degree. But during that time period, people have creeped in, you know, as they add these like 9/11 restrictions, or I shouldn't say as they added, 20 years ago almost, they added these 9/11 restrictions. And with that, coincidentally, has been the time of the most proliferation of groups coming over. And they're not these little hidden cells. I mean, maybe there are to whatever degree. I'm not trying to argue that. But for the most part, what's going on is not necessarily even have to do with hidden cells of groups. They're right there in the daylight. They're right there exposed, what they're doing. You know, who cares if they're conspiring or colluding behind the scenes? Like, the fact is it's all right there on the freaking surface. You don't even have to do conspiracy theory to talk about it. You just talk about it, and people probably accuse you of being a conspiracy theorist. It's like, well, I'm just talking about the facts of what your person or whatever these people are said on the news or wherever they said it, and that's it. End of story. You know, it's amazing. And the whole, it's so trippy too to be able to divide the left and the right down the middle for the most part, like we can right now. But I think the moderates would lean with the conservatives right now. You know, I'm a little more moderate, and I feel like I'm definitely stepping in the red zone there. Like, I don't want to be construed in the blue. Like, that is It's too far. It's too extreme. It's too much extremism over there on that side towards like you can't put a vote in that favor without having your vote tied to extremism. I feel like you could argue that you can vote on the right and not be an extremist. Of course, anybody's welcome to argue that any way they want, and I'd be happy to hear opposing arguments on that. But that's the way I feel. That's the argument I would put up. And then so you could see that it's like, what if they would have? They always are negative Trump on here. They paint this whole picture that, you know, for the most part, 90% of it is just completely untrue or fake. I haven't even clicked through on this Trump concedes thing because I'm just like, I would be shocked if it was real. I think there would be like 600,000 tweets if that was the truth, at least. But that's just part of it, you know. What are they doing about like saying that Biden is the president-elect even though it's uncertified? All that junk. What do we have here? Let's see. They're trying to let the sports dominate. There's Trump concedes again. Now it's been updated to 1,000 more tweets. News. Voting by mail, they're still pushing this propaganda is safe and legal, experts and data confirm. And then they provide you with no experts and no data on the subject. Then there's this huge gathering for Trump. And if you look with Trump, he's surrounded by people all the time, like real people. And you go look at Biden and he's surrounded by like Ford trucks and Jeeps and not real people. And it's just like, it's too weird that guy, like, to Biden, whenever I watch any of his stuff, it reminds me of like, at least most of it lately, he's been trying to do this whole, it either reminds me of like the Chinese Communist Party style or whatever communist kind of vibe of a party style of doing things, or else it reminds me, it's like so Americanized that it reminds me of like a fake little movie that I'm watching. And the thing too is that what they say, they do the complete and exact opposite of, unless it's bad, unless it's like, we're going to lock down, then you could believe they're going to do that. But I should say more, whatever they accuse the other side of doing, they are totally guilty of. They are totally guilty of being racist. They are totally guilty of segregation. They are the ones totally guilty, if anybody's totally guilty, of creating the KKK, you know? And it's like, they try and blame that on the right, and the right had little to nothing to do with that. You know, I'm sure there were people that would vote conservative or whatever that I would imagine maybe, but the evidence is overwhelmingly points to it's a completely Democrat, as in the Democratic Party type of an establishment or whatever you want to call it. Just kind of scanning down here. President Trump is projected to win North Carolina. Well, that's weird that he keeps getting projected to win states, and he Alaska, North Carolina, whatever, but yet Biden's the president-elect, huh? Joe Biden projected to win Arizona. So ridiculous. What? Somebody must have blurred out what Trump said. Oh, the stupid Twitter timeline thing. All right, look. Oh well, you might have seen it flash. You could go back and like pause the video for a split second. There was looked like Trump had put something about probably like, I'm not going to concede or something, and somebody erased a bunch of it. Pretty creative. Oh, he only won the ayes. I concede nothing. We have a long way to go. This was a rigged election. He probably paid. He won. I concede. Whatever. Something like that. Pretty dumb. But that's trending on Twitter, and it's not going to be censored because it's part of that whole narrative. What's this? Voting by mail. Okay, where's the experts? Where's the experts? I need you to know this. Oh, Fox News is the expert, right? Trump has 4 weeks argued without evidence that mail voting is prone to fraud, a claim with elections. Without evidence, that's the big narrative too. That's the without evidence. Without evidence. Well, the proof is in the pudding, right? Or the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Like, you have to go in, and he's saying it's suspect when the people have to stand 10, 20 feet back and they can't see clear enough to like read the ballot over the shoulder of the person doing the counting or whatever, then that's suspect. That right there, I don't know how to put it. That right there seems like evidence to me. That's evidence to create suspicion and all that kind of stuff. It wasn't a transparent election. So probably thousands of ballots are going to likely end up getting thrown out. Most likely. It may not go that way, but when you factor in all the angles in all the counties that this kind of bullshit was going on in, they are going to have to say, hey, yeah, of course there's tons of disinformation or misinformation, whatever you want to call it, going around on social media around this whole both sides of the election counting kind of stuff. Like, there's the people who, they brought in ballots at night or whatever. Some of that may be true. This is why we need the courts to decide, not a freaking social media poll or something. But that's just it. It's like those could go either way. I've seen a lot of that stuff where half of it looks like it's probably bullshit, right? But the other half, which is just just as substantial, is that could very potentially be legit. So we just need a trustworthy system to go in and look at that. And the most trustworthy one we have, whether we like it or not, is the Supreme Court, And I'm not the biggest fan of anybody on the Supreme Court, just like I'm not the biggest fan of most people in politics at all. And even the ones that I am a fan of, if I just watch them for a couple months, I usually find them talking about things which I vehemently disagree with. So it's no big deal. That's just, we're all different or whatever. Joe Biden and his whole, and he's done this whole, he's played into the president-elect thing, so is Kamala Harris. Like, they're both playing into that, and that's pretty screwed up. I could understand, like, to a certain degree, like what Trump does, like making claims while staying on your side of the fence, but actually standing up on that podium and being like behind the podium, on that soapbox, like officially trying to quasi-officially proclaim yourself as like this whole thing. Give me a break, Even Trump's doing that less. He's the sitting president and he's doing that less. You got this whole left-wing narrative of like trying to say that, we're worried about what Trump's going to do his last 70 days. Well, fuck off. He's 70 days. We need him for those 70 days. Of course they're worried about him. You know what I mean? Like, well, he might do too much good. It might take us an extra month to flip all his shit if we successfully get him out of there. It's ridiculous. It's so fucking ridiculous. It's like, that dude is the president until at least January 20th, no matter what happens. You know what I mean? Unless they somehow something way crazy happens, which that would be ridiculous. You know what I mean? And it's like, trust me, you guys got 4 years of these freaks coming, potentially. Like, you might look into some shit since the election's passed and you already cast your uneducated vote. Go dig in now and go really look, erase the narratives out of your head. I'm not saying you need to vote for Trump, but the fact that if you marked a paper for these people, I'll tell you what, that you just couldn't, every argument people make about why they don't like Trump, these people are definitely guilty of. Absolutely 100% guilty of. And it's like, I'm not trying to accuse anybody. I'm just saying, hey, this is a fact. I don't care whether or not they go to jail or anything like that for it. I'm just saying that if we just knew stuff, it wouldn't matter. You could just write these people off and be like, okay, we don't care about those people because they're so corrupt. Like, we realize a lot of people have whatever degree of corruption and that's not cool. But these people are just spewing over the fucking brim with corruption Joe Biden, early in his career, admitted that he prostitutes himself to big companies and whatever. He's there to be a political prostitute. You know what I mean? That's like, and both of them are doing that, you know. And Kamala Harris basically says the same thing. I haven't heard her use that exact language. I have heard Joe Biden use that language. Kamala, though, you can just, it's right there. It's right in plain sight. You watch her, she's like, oh, she'll drill into, you know, in the primary debates for the Democrats, she grills Joe Biden on all this stuff that is so important to her that she can't, you know, she has to bring it up. But then when they go running mates and she's asked about that, she's like, oh, that was just, you know, that was just politics. That was just a debate. It was just a debate. Ha ha ha. And it's like, oh, really? So you don't take the things you debate serious? And that's just, of course, it's not a huge surprise. But if you go back through everything she says and does, it's all like that. Whenever the serious topics come up, she just starts laughing. You know what I mean? And not even Trump does that. So we're up to date, huh? All right. Thanks a lot for watching.